Hey everyone, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with a end of project video for this 1/6 scale Armortek Late Production German Tiger 1. Since the last video update, the last of the tank's accessories and components has been added, and the model is now completed. We'll be going over these additions that completed the model in this video. Starting with the model's tracks, like I mentioned in the previous video, because the tracks are all metal, natural weathering will occur to them after the model gets driven. As you can see, the model has been driven since the last video, and the tracks do show their appropriate wear now. This is true for all Armortek tanks, as all Armortek tanks feature metal linkable track. Moving up from the track takes us to the transport cable. Like I mentioned in a earlier video, the transport cable on this version of the Tiger 1 is that of the Late pattern, and it differs with the layout than that of the earlier production units. Like I mentioned before, the earlier production units feature both of the eyelets in this location here, and then the cable snakes across these clips here in order to keep it in the stowed state. On the later production unit, it is very similar to that of the King Tiger, in which one of the posts get mounted to this eyelet, and then it goes ahead and runs along the hull, loops around, back to the front, and then back to the rear again, to which then the eyelet is secured to the tank via this mount. The mount itself is adjustable, like I mentioned, and on the model here it's fully functional, and as you can see it here, it has its correct tension fitted to the cable. The cable itself is the Armortek kit original and was just simply painted and then mounted to the mounts that I fabricated in an earlier scene. Moving our way to the rear of the vehicle, see the completed details. The jack has been added. The jack on the kit here is the supplied one with the Armortek kit original. The Armortek supplies you with a white metal and resin aftermarket set from Armor Packs. The jack is exquisitely done and was just simply assembled and painted out of the box with no mods needed. Moving our way from the jack takes us to the cold weather starter plate. The starter plate that you see here is a new addition to the EastCoastArmory.com product line and is all cast in resin. This version here is that of the Late pattern, which would be found on Late pattern Tiger 1s. The Late pattern differs from the earlier production units in that the Late pattern features more accessories and components that are not present on the earlier styles of starter plates. Moving on from the cold weather starter takes me to the divisional markings that are painted on the hull. These markings here were absent in the previous video, and after doing some more research on the tank, I see that the tank was equipped with these markings. The markings were added to the rear and front of the tank. They're simply painted on, just like the rest of the other markings. Another marking that was modified since the previous video was that of the 134 identification number on the rear bustle bin of the tank. In the previous video, you will notice that the number was just stroke only and did not have its center portions painted. Again, after doing some more research on the vehicle, I found that this vehicle had the center portions of the numbers painted black on the rear bustle bin. Moving from the numbers takes us down to the fuel cover caps. As we can see since the last video, the detail cover cap inserts have been painted and have been screwed onto their locations. Now on the model here, to refill the smoke fluid for the smoke unit, that is facilitated by this cover here. There's a duplicate one on the opposite side, so you can refuel the smoke filler fluid from either side of the vehicle. The way this is done is with a tube that is stowed in the bustle bin. It is then plugged into this location here. Once the tube is plugged in, you can then pour the smoke fluid from the jar into this portion here, and with the onboard refueling pump, it will bring the fluid down into the tank, into the smoke fluid reservoir where it belongs. Once it is no longer needed, you simply unplug the tube, fold it away, and tuck it into the storage bin in a very similar manner as what was done on the real Tigers. Once the smoke fluid is refueled, you could go ahead and screw on the insert again, just like on the real tank. For these two locations here, these caps here are purely for detail purposes, and when unscrewed, you can get access to the detail radiator cover caps that are on the fans below this section here. Moving from the smoke fluid refiller cap takes us to the fire extinguisher. The Tiger 1, as with all German tanks, featured an external mounted fire extinguisher. The fire extinguisher that you see on this model here is a resin component from Armortek. The piece actually is kit supplied with the Armortek tank and is extremely nicely done and nicely detailed. No mods are needed to be made to this piece, and it's simply assembled and installed out of box. While on this component here, one thing as of note is that a common mistake found on smaller scale builds is that model builders like to paint this component here in red, like you would see with a kitchen fire extinguisher. The problem is that the fire extinguishers found on the exterior of German tanks were not in red. In fact, were actually either Schwarzgrau or Panzer Gray in color, or were Dunkelgelb. Another little trait that's found on on Tigers specifically is that the fire extinguisher is mounted in a very strange location. Because of the tow cable and of the filler cap for the radiator, the mount for the fire extinguisher is mounted askew on the radiator armor cover. Half of it, or a quarter of it, is connected to the tank, while the other half kind of just dangles off of the tank's radiator cover like you see here. Tiger 1 is unique, and that's probably one of the only tanks where this is the case. Moving our way down takes us to the antenna base. The antenna base that you see on this model here is purely for detail reasons only and is not connected to the tank's radio. This is because, again, the tank utilizes a 2 GHz radio, which is a plus in that it saves an extra umbilical cord needed for this piece of detailing here. The piece here is my own resin casting. The mount itself is casted in a flexible resin and is actually left unpainted. This portion here is actually the real color of the material, which lends itself for a little bit of realism. As you can see on German antenna bases, unlike American antenna bases, there's a small little tube emerging from the rubber insulator that has a small brass wing nut that, once tightened, prevents the antenna from getting loose. Now, on the model here, the antenna is actually removable. This is done for storage reasons, as the protruding antenna tends to get in the way and snag easily, specifically when the tank is in storage. When the tank needs to be displayed, you simply take the antenna, slide it into the base as you see here, and the model is ready to run. Directly next to the antenna is actually the crank handle for the starter, and on Tiger 1s is fitted in this location here. Moving on, takes us back to the tank's tow cables. Like I mentioned before, the tow cables were mounted in the previous video. However, since the last scene, the gun cleaning staves or rods have been added. The gun cleaning staves are kit supplied. The kit supplies you with a wonderful set of real wood dowel rods along with real CNC'd brass and connectors. As you can see, they have their threadings on them and are very nicely done and nicely detailed. The kit supplies you with enough components to equip both sides of the tank. On the opposite side, it is a mirror image. The only difference is that on one of the rods, I added the bore cleaning bristle that you see here. The bore cleaning bristle was mounted on one of the staves, and normally on Tiger 1s would be covered in a canvas bag. However, a canvas bag is not present for this model, so I have the bore bristles left exposed. Moving up from the cleaning staves takes us to the spare tracks. Like I mentioned before, the tank has functional spare track racks, and here we can see some of the spare tracks from the actual tank affixed to the racks. like the real tank, you simply move the hinge and lift out the spare track link. To put the track link back in, the guide rod goes into the one hole for the track pin. Once it's in, you click down the top, and the hinge or the link is now affixed to the side. The rest of the tools were also added. Let me first rotate the turret out of the way. Like I mentioned in a previous video, all or most of the Pioneer tools that you see here are supplied with the Armortek kit and are actually a white metal aftermarket set from Armorpacks. The Armorpacks tools are extremely nicely detailed and are a very nice addition that are supplied with the base kit. The only addition and modification that I made to the tools was that the tool handles that are on the original Armorpacks components are made out of white metal. Rather than trying to paint the white metal and trying to make it look like wood, I simply replaced the white metal components with that of real wood handles. The real wood handles were treated, stained, and then added to the metal components that you see here. As of note, on the clipper, on German tanks, the wire cutter actually has two Bakelite bottom bases on the lower portion here of the handle. Now, currently the piece is firmly in place and I don't want to take it off. However, as you can see from the bottom portion of the mount, the Bakelite tips are present and are scratch built out of turned resin. One tool that is not included with the Armorpack set is that of the crowbar. The crowbar that you see here is scratch built by myself out of a steel rod. Also, like I mentioned in the other videos, all of the tool clasps are fully functional and secure the tools firmly to the tank surface. This is also true for the crowbar. Moving our way to the jack block. The jack block here is actually also a supplied piece with the Armortek kit. However, the Armortek kit just supplies you with a nice wooden square piece of wood. The German tanks feature two steel support straps that are riveted and nailed to the block of wood. On the piece here, I went ahead and fabricated the strips out of thin pieces of brass, and the rivets are actually nails that are nailed into the wood, holding the whole piece together. The small little briefcase style handle is one of my resin castings and was added as is present on the real piece. Moving our way down from the jack block takes us to the bow assistant driver MG34T bow machine gun. The component that you see here is actually supplied with the kit and is comprised out of a single piece of CNC steel. The component was installed as is with no mods needed. The component is adequately detailed, and like I mentioned before, one mod that was made to the machine gun ball was the fact that it can pivot. One of the last pieces of detailing that was added to the tank was that of the anti-aircraft machine gun mount. The anti-aircraft machine gun mount that you see here is a white metal component from Armorpacks. This component is yet another addition that is included with the stock Armortek kit. The component that you see here is highly detailed and is highly recommended. The piece comprised out of white metal components as well as a resin German AFV ammo bag. The component on this tank that you see here came pre-assembled by the previous builder. He did a very adequate job and no mods were made to this piece. The gun can pivot from side to side and can also pivot from this portion here. Now, currently, notice the piece is a bit wobbly. This is because the component is not glued to the machine gun ring. The purpose of not gluing the machine gun ring to the mount is currently I have this piece loose so that the customer can position the component anywhere he likes and can install it permanently once the gun is in a portion that meets his taste. Also, currently, you do not see a machine gun affixed to the machine gun ring. This is because on the German tanks, the only time a machine gun would be placed here is when the tank is actually not in combat. The machine gun would actually be either the coaxial machine gun from the turret or the bow machine gun that's found in the hull. When the tank is not in combat, it is removed from that location there and placed on top of the commander's ring that you see here in order to give the tank some protection from aircraft when the tank is not in battle. Like I mentioned, one of the main attributes of this model is the fact that it has a fully working and detailed engine compartment. Now that the tank is finished, I will go ahead and display the tank with the engine compartment fully functioning. First, I'm going to activate the engine as well as the fans. Rotate the turret. Because of the track jacks, the turret needs to be in a certain position in order to open it. This is as per the real vehicle. Here's the engine fully functioning. Here we have the drive shaft spinning for the cooling fans. Also, spinning would be the main flywheel, however, it is very difficult to get into frame. Fans are fully functioning. Smoke system is going. Back up, simply close the engine hatch, close the grills, and the tank is now ready for a test drive. And that concludes this end of project video for this 1/6 scale Armortek Late Production German Tiger 1. If you like this video, stop by and like us on Facebook. And don't forget to check out eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/6 and 1/16 scale builds and detail components. Thank you.